These are the three types of persons present among the bhikkhus who are comparable to Benares cloth. What sort of person is one to be easily measured? Here is a certain person who is haughty, insolent, fickle, garrulous, irrelevant in speech, having the memory confused, unmindful, of unsettled and erring mind with his senses out of hand. Such a person is one who may be easily measured. What sort of person is one hard to be measured? Here is a certain person who is not haughty, not insolent, not fickle, not garrulous, not irrelevant in speech, having the memory collected, mindful, composed and concentrated in mind and his senses controlled. Such a person is one who is hard to be measured. What sort of person cannot be measured? Here is a certain person who on the wearing out of the sinful tendencies, devoid of these, having by himself come to know and realize even in this life emancipation of mind and of insight, lives in attainment thereof. Such a person is one who cannot be measured. What sort of person should not be served or respected or waited upon? Here a certain person happens to be inferior in respect of morals, concentration, and insight. Such a person should not be served, nor respected, nor waited upon except out of compassion. What sort of person is to be served, respected, or waited upon? Here a certain person happens to be quite an equal in respect of morals, concentration, and insight. Such a person is to be served, etc. And for what reason? Because of the common possession of virtue there will be virtuous discourse between us and that will be to our benefit and that will be conducive to our advance. And because of the common possession of concentration there will also be virtuous discourse on concentration. That will be to our benefit and will be conducive to our advance. And lastly, because of the common possession of insight, there will be virtuous discourse between us on insight that will be to our benefit and it will be conducive to our advance. And it is for this reason that such a person ought to be served, cultivated, waited upon. What sort of person having been honored, revered, is to be served, cultivated, waited upon? Here a certain person happens to be greater in respect of virtue, concentration, insight. Such a person is to be honored, served, waited upon. Why? Because I shall fulfill the body of those precepts which are unfulfilled, or I shall learn such and such precepts that I have fulfilled. Or I shall fulfill the branches of concentration which are unfulfilled, or I shall learn this and that branch by insight which I have fulfilled. Lastly, because I shall do likewise as to the cultivation of insight. Therefore such a person, having been honored, revered, should be served, cultivated, and waited upon. What sort of person is to be abhorred, not to be served, not to be cultivated, not to be waited upon? Here a certain person happens to be immoral, wicked, of impure habits and conduct, doer of deeds which are concealed. Unworthy of being a monk, he passes for a monk. Not leading a holy life, he passes for one who leads a holy life. Corrupt within, filled with sinful desires, he is one in whom foulness has accumulated. Such a person should be abhorred, not served, nor respected, nor waited upon. What is the reason? Even though such a person does not entertain a heretical view, still his notoriety spreads. This person is a friend of the sinner, an associate of the sinner, and is entangled with the sinner. Just as a serpent falling into filth, although it will not bite, will be besmeared with it, in the same way even though such a person does not entertain heretical views, etc. Such a person should be abhorred, not served, not cultivated, not waited upon. What sort of person is to be treated with indifference, not served, not cultivated, not waited upon? Here a certain person who is wrathful and irascible, who, if anything, however little, is said, at once becomes displeased, angry, out of sorts, stubborn, and gives vent to anger, enmity, and discontent. Just as a gangrenous sore when poked by means of a wooden stick or stone discharges putrid matter largely, so also there is such a person as that. Just as an ember of tinduka when poked by means of a stick or stone makes a hissing noise, so also there is such a person as that. Just as a pit full of filth when churned by means of a stick or stone gives out an exceedingly bad odor, so also there is such a person as that. Such a person is to be treated with indifference, etc. And for what reason? Because, out of anger he may speak ill of me, ridicule me, and do me some harm. Therefore such a person is to be treated with indifference, not to be served, not cultivated, not waited upon. What sort of person is to be served, cultivated, waited upon? Here a certain person happens to be virtuous and of lovely disposition. Such a person is to be served, cultivated, waited upon. And for what reason? Even if such a person happens to entertain a heretical view, still a good fame will be abroad that such a person is the friend, the associate, of lovely persons, is entangled with them. Therefore, such a person should be served, cultivated, waited upon. What sort of person is he who fulfills the moral laws but incompletely practices concentration and insight? The stream-attainer is also the once-returner. These are the persons who fulfill the moral laws, but incompletely practice concentration and insight. What sort of person is he who fulfills the moral laws and completes the practices of concentration, but incompletely practices insight? The never-returner. Such is the person who fulfills the moral laws and completes the practice of concentration, but incompletely practices insight. What sort of person is he who fulfills the moral laws and completes the practice of concentration and also that of insight? The arahant. Such is the person who fulfills the moral laws and completes those practices. Who are the three teachers? Here a certain teacher sets out an understanding of sense desires, but neither of the objects of sense nor of feelings. Again, another teacher sets out the first two but not the last, and lastly there is a teacher who sets out an understanding of all the three. Now, here a teacher of the first order is to be understood as a teacher who has attained the ecstatic state belonging to the world of form. Again, the teacher of the second order is to be understood as a teacher who has attained ecstatic meditation belonging to the world of the formless.